Hey, how's it going? It's Walsh here, sick as always. I tried out Last Epoch again for my third attempt this season, and I've just come to the conclusion the game currently is just not really for me. At first, I told myself it was just like okay to say I didn't like the game, and I was just not going to look back at it for a long time. But I feel like if I'm going to sit here and say I don't like something or enjoy something, that the very least I can do is try to understand, even for just myself, why I feel that way. So to start off, I just want to say that Last Epoch is a very good and solid ARPG, even though it's not really a game for me, which I'll talk about here in a minute. But this is, in my opinion, a significantly better game than PoE 2. I think it's very fun. It's very well laid out. A lot of care was taken to try and make everything that is in this game actually playable. So you can pretty much pick any skill you want and start playing the game, which is a good thing and a bad thing depending on who you are. But like I said, even though it's not for me, I highly recommend trying it out. Remember, everything I'm going to talk about is just my opinion and personal feelings. So what I say or feel may not match with you. So don't just like take anything I say at my word. So I love ARPGs. I think they're amazing. I've loved them for a very long time. The entire concept of like this is your character, this character is your economy and your goal, and you want to build it and see just how far and strong you can make it. And I don't know, I just love that entire concept. There are some very wide and narrow ways to take the concept of ARPG, and I think it's like I don't know, I think that's a very important part of games is recognizing that there's the core concept and then it needs to be stretched and changed. I think that's a good thing. To try and kind of explain in the most simplified and well, I wouldn't say straightforward, but might not be straightforward, but it's kind of convoluted. But this is the best way I can really break down the ARPG genre. So just imagine, I just want you to think of like a trail in the woods, right? And whatever game you're playing, you start at the very beginning of the trail. So let's look at a game like Diablo 4. From the very start of the trail, you can see all the way across to the end. There's like a couple trees, maybe there's a bush, and you can see some paths that like go left or right or whatever. But from the very start of your trail, you can see where every single path ends up and exactly how to get there. Now, let's look at a game like Path of Exile. At the very start of your trail, you're just surrounded by paths in every single direction. Some of them just like layered on each other, just completely densely covered in like bushes and everything and trees. And you can only see a very tiny distance away from where you start. And after randomly going through paths, sometimes you just have to begin again at the very start. But every time you fail, every time you have to restart, you start noticing little like markers and indicators of good trails and bad trails, and you can start taking bad trails and taking them further just by understanding how they move and they work. And then you reach a large clearing, a big gap that leads to another pile of paths going through even more trees. But now you know you've breached this gap and you're about to enter another one. And even though there's more paths in front of you, you have no idea where they go or how far they can even take you. And you never even know if there's an ending to anything. And that's just kind of Path of Exile. Now, let's look at Last Epoch. Each trail that you start at goes through the forest, but each is perfectly labeled and very easy to see. There's definitely, a forest there, there's trees covering stuff. Each step, though, is numbered, it's measured, and you completely understand it. You're not able to get lost, but you can also see that you have some choices in front of you. If you take a lot of time and you sit there and patient, you can actually see the very end of the trail. Like it's pretty clearly marked, but there are many places to go and things to see before you get there, but you do know exactly where they are. Now, each of these games is an action role playing game, and as you can see, they do it all in their very own way. I think it's more important to look at what a game does with the genre it's a part of than it is to say whether a game is good or bad. There's nothing wrong with wanting to be like lost in the forest, like with PoE, trying to find your own way and sometimes finding out you failed, having to go back. And I also completely understand someone wanting to play a game and at the very start know I'm not going to get lost, I'm not going to feel overwhelmed, I'm just going to have fun and get stronger. So, before we talk about Last Epoch, I do just want to very quickly remind you of something very important. While it's completely natural and normal to compare games of the same genre, it is critical that you remember each of these games are their own thing. They stand as an individual. They are, they have their own developers, their own like I don't want to say just style, but their own method of doing the mechanic of ARPGs. So it's always important to remember each of these things stand on their own. But again, it's very natural to compare them. So anyway, first of all, what I want to talk about with Epoch are the skills. So first of all, I do like the idea of, you select 5 skills that you level up, and then you have a little skill tree for each one. I think that's really cool. I think it's a good system. The problem with it for just me personally is like as soon as I see this, I'm like, okay, I have like 4 or 5 real options or at least directions to go because look, I have to start at one of these 3 points, you know what I mean? So already, like, all I see is like it's not narrow because each skill really does have a lot of different ways to play it. Like for example, my skill, you could take it a couple different directions. You can go for the big crits like I am, and you can make it channel faster, or then you can make it even channel slower to get more effect. All kinds of ways you could take it. You could even do kind of like an axe throw way. And another fun way, which I was gonna try, but I just didn't get to it, was trying this furnace method where basically while you're channeling, you're shooting these little fire bursts at the same time, which is really cool. And you might be wondering, why would you care about that? Well, there's a couple reasons. One, you can actually scale the ignite on this character very well, which I think would be very fun. But eventually, you can actually take this node here, which makes you do even more damage per ignite stack. And then if you do some funny combos with crit and stuff like that, you could take this very far in a different direction, which again is a huge positive for the skills. But at the same time, I look at this and I can see, okay, I can do it this way, this way, this way, or this way. And then that kind of feels like it. I'm sure maybe there's one like unique enabling way, maybe two for certain skills, but generally that's everything you can do with a skill, and that's a good thing and a bad thing. For me, it's not necessarily a bad thing, it's just not as enjoyable for me to see everything I can do. But again, that's a personal preference. If you see this and you're like, oh, I really like that, I know what the skill is, I know what different directions I can go, and then go from there. So again, these aren't bad things, it's just a difference of opinion. So we talked about skills and how they level up and you have choices. Let's look at your character itself. First of all, you choose whatever class you're going to be. For example, I'm a sentinel. And then you have a few options. You get to master one other class, which means you can also take it the full way. But then the other two you could put points in, so you could still like splash them and get stuff that you need. But you cannot get the level 30 skill. You see this chain right here blocking you off. It doesn't matter how many points I put on here. I cannot get this skill. So essentially, I put 15 points in here to get Symbol of Hope. So you have your main skill or your main class, which gives you, your 4 skills, and then you could choose one of the subclasses to master, and then you can get those 4 skills. And then you could, I imagine in theory, you could get all three, and then these two right here. But no matter what, you cannot get the last skill here, which I think is a fun and interesting way to do it. But again, the skill tree, first of all, if you like, it feels like I don't know. It doesn't feel bad. It just kind of feels like I know everything I can do right away, which isn't, again, I keep saying it. I got to stop saying it. But look, I just want to be very clear. These aren't bad things. It's just difference of taste. So I would recommend, again, if you haven't played Last Epoch, you definitely should. The reason I don't really like this is everything, like, just like with the skill system here, everything is just clearly there. I know everything I could do. I pretty much know everything I could scale. And of course, like I said earlier, there are I'm sure a unique or two that can change some variables or whatever. But generally speaking, when it comes to my skill points, I know what everything is going to do. And I think Last Epoch for this next system here, I think Last Epoch has done a very interesting thing where it's like, yeah, our skill system is very simple, it's very clearly laid out, which again is a very positive thing for some people. It's not necessarily a bad thing. And then they do the same thing with items. It's very clear. You got your prefixes listed here, suffixes listed here. Everything you can do is written in the most clear way possible with all these systems. At least I think so. I think it's very difficult to look at Last Epoch and struggle. The only way I think you can struggle with understanding what the game is saying or doing is if you just don't read anything and you don't look at anything. Because even at a glance, I mean, I feel like you could figure this out. My item has 3 mods. I can put one mod on here, and I can use either this to change those mods or this to change those mods. Obviously, that's a very broken down way of looking at it, but that's essentially what it is. I love the glyph system. I think it's a cool idea. I think this idea of breaking between runes and glyphs is a great idea. It gives you a lot of flexibility with items. I love that you can get like these legendaries. I am absolutely obsessed with Weaver's Will. If you don't know what Weaver's Will is, it's essentially here. Do I have one in my stash actually? Probably not. No, I don't. Actually, wait. Well, let me explain. So essentially, Weaver's Will is your item leveling up. So let's look at my needle here. So all of those stats in that like pinkish red color at the very top, all of those were random. This I think this had a Weaver's Will of 10 or whatever. So essentially my weapon got to level up 10 times and it got random modifiers each time. I think Weaver's Will is probably one of the coolest additions to the ARP genre I have seen since Corruption. And if you know me for Path of Exile, double corrupting items is my literal favorite thing in the world. I love double corrupting. I'm obsessed with it. And I think Weaver's Will is the next step to that. I think it's a fantastic mechanic. I love it. Another mechanic I love about this game, if I could show you. So, legendary potential. Legendary potential means so. Let me first explain. Purple items are called exalted items. They essentially have like one or I think maybe two. There might be ways to get more, but as far as I know right now, one or two purple mods, as you can see here, which are essentially the highest tier mod you can get. They're absolutely insane compared to normal mods. And you can take those and put modifiers onto your legendaries. So think of it like this: you have a rare item. It's an exalted, but just hear me out. A rare item that you could take stats off of and put onto your legendaries, which is freaking awesome. It's a cool way to do advanced crafting. It's an interesting way to make uniques that are maybe unplayable actually your best in slot. It's a cool way to make it so you're not just wearing all, exalted items or whatever. Cool way to just like use uniques in the end game. I don't know, man. I think it's a great system. And I think there's a nice balance between like simplicity of skill points, simplicity of like item building, I guess. But you have so many options and so many opportunities to like mess around with it and experiment, and like so many big hits that you actually could have. And of course, so many big failures. And I think for ARPGs, that risk of, just risk versus reward is critical. Just a few quick things to note. Also, you don't have to like walk to a waypoint to teleport. You can just hit M at any time. I think it's a great quality of life thing. It's very nice. But, again, I kind of like having to run to the waypoint sometimes. But for this game, this is definitely way better. Another big plus, if you've never played Last Epoch, you can actually do the end game ecosystem before you finish the campaign. I think you have to hit a certain level just so you don't die, but maybe it scales with you. I'm not sure. But yeah, you could just run right in there. I mean, during the like start of the season, the servers kind of died, so I didn't really have the opportunity to do the campaign. But I got the map, which is pretty cool. So I think that's very good. I like that system. Anyway, I just want to close by saying the game is really good. I highly recommend you trying it. It may or may not be for you, and that's okay. But regardless, even if it isn't, I think this game has added a lot of awesome ideas to the genre. I'm looking forward to see what happens with this game in the future. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you later.